For decades, the United States ruled the Pacific unchallenged. On September 3, 2025, that era ended in Tiananmen Square. China's largest military parade in decades unveiled 4 operational hypersonic anti-ship missiles in a single formation, more deployed types than the US has in development. Defense ministries from Washington to Tokyo triggered emergency reviews. Every American missile defense in the Pacific was designed for a threat that no longer exists. September 3, 2025. In the heart of Beijing, the world's defense leaders watched as China's military staged the most consequential parade of the century. For the first time, 4 distinct hypersonic anti-ship missiles rolled past the stands, each labeled as in service, not prototype, not test article. The official parade script, read live to a global audience, made it clear. These were not experimental weapons. They were operational, deployed, and fully integrated into China's missile forces. Foreign dignitaries from Russia, France, India, and more sat in the front rows, their expressions shifting as the hypersonic convoy advanced. The YJ-17, YJ-19, YJ-20, and YJ-21, names that had floated in defense white papers and rumor mills, now appeared in full formation, each accompanied by crews in parade dress and launch vehicles bearing the unmistakable insignia of active service brigades. Overhead, a Xi'an H-6 bomber flew low, its pylons loaded with hypersonic payloads, while Type 055 destroyer crews saluted from the reviewing platform, underscoring that these weapons could launch from land, sea, air, and beneath the waves. Within hours, emergency meetings convened in Washington, Tokyo, Canberra, and Seoul. Western media scrambled to translate the parade's language: operational, in service, ready for combat. For US defense planners, the message was unambiguous. China's hypersonic arsenal was no longer a theoretical threat. It was deployed, multi-domain, and ready to challenge every existing layer of American missile defense. The question was no longer if China could field these weapons, but how they had achieved it, and whether anything could stop them now. At speeds above Mach 5, over 6,000 kilometers per hour, the rules that once defined missile defense begin to break down. Traditional interceptors depend on predicting a ballistic arc, but hypersonic weapons rewrite that logic. Instead of following a fixed high-altitude trajectory, these missiles dive into the so-called dead zone, an atmospheric corridor between 20 and 30 kilometers above the Earth. It is a band where most radars lose clarity, and neither space-based nor ground-based interceptors are optimized to engage. 2 main designs dominate China's arsenal: boost glide vehicles and scramjet cruise missiles. Boost glide weapons like the DFZ-F launch atop a rocket, then shed their booster to glide at hypersonic speeds, weaving laterally and vertically to avoid tracking. Scramjet-powered missiles such as the YJ-19 ignite their engines mid-air and sustain Mach 6 or higher, adjusting course throughout flight. Both types can maneuver aggressively inside the atmosphere, making their paths as unpredictable. The physics of hypersonic flight create a plasma sheath, a cloud of ionized air that forms around the missile at extreme velocities. This sheath can blind radar and infrared sensors, delaying detection until the weapon is seconds from impact. At these speeds, even the most advanced US interceptors have only a handful of seconds to react. A hypersonic missile launched from 1,500 kilometers away can reach its target in under 10 minutes, but the warning time for defenders may be less than 60 seconds. Add in the ability to launch from land, sea, air, or submarine, and the challenge multiplies. Defenders must guess not just when and where, but from what domain the next attack will come. The result is a window of vulnerability that no legacy defense system can reliably close. After the 1996 Taiwan Strait standoff, China's military command issued a directive that would alter the region's balance of power. The crisis revealed a vulnerability. US carrier groups could operate just off China's coast, while China's missiles posed little threat. By late 1996, the General Armament Department began funding anti-ship ballistic missile development, aiming to deny American carriers freedom of movement near Taiwan. This launched a 3-phase modernization. The first phase, from 1996 to 2005, focused on creating a credible anti-ship ballistic missile. The DF-21 entered service in 2000, followed by the DF-21A, which introduced basic boost glide maneuvering. General Zhang Yuxia, then deputy commander of the 2nd Artillery Force, championed the program, pushing for glide body technology and securing dedicated research and development funding. The second phase, 2006 to 2015, saw the DF-21D, the world's first operational anti-ship ballistic missile, fielded in 2013. The DF-26, capable of reaching Guam, followed in 2015. Zhang, now leading the General Armament Department, initiated hypersonic glide vehicle research, leading to the first successful DF-ZF test in 2014. The final phase, from 2016 to 2025, brought mass production and integration of hypersonic weapons across land, sea, and air. By 2025, China's arsenal had become a multi-domain threat, the result of decades of deliberate modernization under Zhang's guidance. China's hypersonic arsenal now operates as a web, one that can strike from nearly every direction at any moment. In recent years, live-fire footage and satellite imagery have revealed coordinated launches from 4 domains: road-mobile brigades on the mainland, the vertical launch cells of Type 055 destroyers, advanced diesel-electric submarines, and the H-6 bomber fleet. This 4-vector architecture is not theoretical. From 2022 to 2025, Chinese missile forces carried out joint fire drills that synchronized land, sea, air, and subsea launches within a single exercise window. In one widely analyzed event, road-mobile launchers fired YJ-17s from a forested garrison as a Type 055 destroyer released a YJ-20 from its VLS cells. Simultaneously, a Yuan-class AIP submarine ejected a YJ-19, while an H-6K bomber released hypersonic payloads from external pylons. The interval between launches was less than a minute. Command and control data, later leaked in defense journals, showed that target assignments and firing orders traveled across this network in under 2 seconds. With each branch of the PLA missile force trained to operate independently or as a swarm, defenders now face a saturation threat from multiple axes. The old calculus, tracking a handful of ballistic arcs, no longer applies. Instead, US and allied planners must account for a scenario where dozens of hypersonic missiles arrive from land, sea, air, and beneath the waves, each following its own unpredictable path. The result is a layered, joint fire system designed to overwhelm any single point of defense and to compress the defender's response time to the breaking point. Satellite imagery of China's missile complexes tells a story that numbers alone cannot ignore. Over the past year, analysts have documented a steady rhythm. Every week, new assembly bays and launch pads appear at sites like Jiangnan and Taiyuan. Procurement filings and supply chain data confirm what the images suggest. China is now producing between 30 and 40 hypersonic missiles every month. That is not a projection, it is a sustained output, verified by both US intelligence and open-source defense researchers. By comparison, the United States produces just 2 interceptors from its production lines each month, split between THAAD and Standard Missile 3. The cost gap is just as stark. A Chinese hypersonic missile, whether a DF-ZF glide vehicle or a YJ-19 scramjet, runs about $7 million per unit. The latest SM-3 interceptor costs nearly twice that. For every dollar the US spends on a missile defense interceptor, China can field 2 offensive hypersonic weapons. Tom Caraco of the Center for Strategic and International Studies has warned publicly that this imbalance is not just about numbers, it is about the very logic of defense. He said the cost-exchange ratio now favors the attacker. We are looking at a world where the offense can saturate the defense at scale. Missile Defense Agency officials testifying before Congress have echoed that concern. They point to a pipeline capped by industrial bottlenecks and budget ceilings, with no prospect of matching China's monthly output. The result is a cost and volume mismatch that no incremental upgrade can solve. In a real-world conflict, the United States would face the prospect of exhausting its interceptors in days, while China's factories keep churning out new salvos. The defense gap is no longer theoretical. It is a structural fact, visible in satellite photos, budget spreadsheets, and the testimony of those tasked with defending the Pacific. In every recent Pacific war game, the same scenario plays out. Chinese hypersonic salvos compress the window for US reinforcements to single-digit minutes. Carrier strike groups, once the backbone of American presence in the region, face launch to impact timelines so short that even the most advanced Aegis or THAAD batteries cannot reposition or reload in time. Wargame logs from RAND and the Department of Defense show that after a hypersonic strike alert, a carrier has less than 10 minutes to maneuver or launch counter-air sorties before incoming missiles cross the horizon. In simulations, logistics corridors that once offered days of warning now provide only minutes. The main air bridge from Guam to Taiwan, for example, can be neutralized by a coordinated salvo before half the planned reinforcements are even airborne. Supply ships and merchant convoys, critical for sustaining any Pacific campaign, are exposed along every major sea lane. Monte Carlo simulations run by CNA put the odds of a high-value ship surviving the first 48 hours at less than 40%. The risk calculus for any commander considering a reinforcement or resupply operation has changed. It is no longer about how many forces can be sent, but whether they can even arrive before the corridor is cut. Allied capitals are now forced to weigh the political cost of deploying carriers or large surface groups within the range of Chinese hypersonics. The old assumption that the US could surge forces to Taiwan or the Philippines in a crisis no longer holds. The question now sits squarely in front of policymakers. In a world where reinforcement windows are measured in minutes and the risk of carrier loss is higher than at any time since World War II, what options remain? The answer is still unwritten. China's hypersonic arsenal is not a future threat. It is operational reality. As US defenses lag behind, every Pacific strategy now hinges on adaptation, not assumption. The window for technological catch-up is closing. In this new era, deterrence is not guaranteed. It must be earned. What would it take to restore balance?